Hello, welcome back. It feels so good to be back here on my channel. I hope you all are doing well. I took a break for almost 3 months and I did not create any content here. But while I was not creating content, I was studying. There is this character in the Bible that really fascinated me. A person we probably would consider a villain in the story, maybe a mistake in history, an unwelcome character in the narrative. If you are a computer programmer, maybe you would consider this person a bug in your programming language. Hagar, the Egyptian slave girl of Sarah. Hagar was used, abused, and abandoned. She was a person that is dismissed as a mistake. But God considered her worthy to go after her, worthy enough to be the first person in the Bible to have a theophany, an encounter with the angel of the Lord. Now, this angel is not your garden variety angel. It is a pre-incarnate manifestation of God Himself. That's the encounter that Hagar had. God considered her worthy enough that her son was named by God Himself. And she is the first person in the Bible to also give a name to God. She said, El Roi, you are the God who sees me. You're not an idol who I was used to worshiping back in Egypt. You're not an idol who have eyes but don't see. You're not an idol who have ears but don't hear. You're not like those idols who have mouths but don't speak. You are the God who sees me. You see my despair, you see my rejection, you see my abuse, my loneliness, my tears. You are a God who sees me. You are El Roi. Are you wondering, where is God when I'm hurting so much? Is God hearing my cries? Does God see my hurt? Will I find healing for these deep wounds? Will there be justice for me in this mess that I didn't create? You know, we have to remember Hagar did not initiate this mess in history. She didn't invite it. She didn't desire for it. She did not volunteer for it. She didn't want to be Sarah's surrogate. She didn't say, Sarah, I see you're having trouble getting pregnant. I see that you're struggling with your barrenness. Let me help you. No, it was not Hagar's idea. It was Sarah's idea. Sarah was the one who came up with this idea of having a surrogate mother for the baby that she desperately wanted. You know, these days we have commercial companies who make surrogacy possible. Now, if you don't know what a surrogate motherhood is, it's a practice in which a woman bears a child for a couple who is unable to produce children in a natural way. Or maybe if a woman is struggling to get pregnant, whether it's because of hormonal imbalances, or maybe pregnancy is a risky thing medically for that woman. And if that husband and wife, that particular couple can afford the process, they can choose a surrogate mother to have babies. You know, commercial surrogacy became very popular now in the last century, 20th and 21st century. And India is one of the leading countries that provide surrogate services for international clients. And a lot of people from the US go to India to find surrogate mothers if they choose to go that route to have babies. But long before surrogacy became a commercial service, we see it here in the book of Genesis. We see it here being cooked up in Sarah's mind. Let's go to Genesis chapter 16, verse 2. So Sarah said to Abram, Now behold, the Lord has prevented me from bearing children. Please go into my maid. Perhaps I will obtain children through her. And Abram listened to the voice of Sarah. There it is. Sarah wants to do God's will, but she wanted to do it her way, not God's way. She says, The Lord has prevented me from bearing children. Sarah blamed God for the problem, But the ironic thing is, she's not seeking God for the solution. She said, God kept me from having children. But she didn't say, I'm going to go to God. I'm going to go to Him and get my solution from Him. She didn't acknowledge the fact that the God who kept this blessing from her is very much capable, is very much able of giving that blessing to her at the right time. She didn't seek Him for the solution. Instead, she came up with her own solution, her own idea of doing God's will her way, in her timing. I know you want God's will. I want God's will too. We all want God's will. But are you tempted to having it in your own way, in your own timing? I don't know what you've been waiting for. Maybe you've been waiting to get married. I actually feel so sad for all the young people who have been waiting to get married for years, and then this pandemic happened, and now it's become so hard to find the right match, find the right circumstances to get married. Maybe you've been waiting for a job. You've been probably waiting for a few months, and then the pandemic hit, and now the job market is so sluggish and slow. Perhaps you've been waiting to have kids, and I can understand how hard and anxious and stressful that can feel. To anxiously wait month after month to see your dream come true. Maybe you've been waiting for a new house. We are all at home these days, and I guess everyone is feeling like their homes are small and crowded, with every single family member being at home all the time. The need for a bigger house can just feel so urgent, and you've already maybe been waiting for it for a few months. Have you been waiting for something else? You waited for a few months, maybe a few years. And some of you maybe even waited for a few decades. Sarah waited for decades. In spite of God's promise, actually, Sarah had God's promise. God promised them an heir. She had all the promises of God. Maybe you have the promises from the Lord too, and you've been waiting for a very long time. Are you tempted to do God's will, but in your own way, in your own time, according to your own plan? Sometimes things take a long time. When they do, it is a temptation. It's a temptation to start planning out our own course of action. It was God's will to give Abraham and Sarah an heir. The promise was there for a son, to build a nation through them. But Sarah, after waiting for decades, finally decided that maybe God needs a little help from her. I'm going to figure things out, she thought. Sarah was desperate. And desperate people do desperate things. Sarah's desperation led to persuasion. She began to persuade Abram. And let me give you a dictionary meaning for persuasion. Persuasion means to cause a person to do something through reasoning or argument. It means to convince someone through sustained effort. Think about that. To convince someone through sustained effort. Does that sound familiar to you? When you are desperate to have something, do you begin to persuade people? Do you begin to persuade family around you? Do you try and convince people to do something that you feel desperate about? Sarah, in her desperation, began convincing Abraham. Now, you have to remember, Sarah is a 75-year-old woman at this point. She knows the power of persuasion. She knew she could convince Abraham. Now, ladies, let me talk to you for a little bit. We have been given a gift. Women are uniquely gifted. They're given a gift of persuasion, a gift to convince, to motivate, to persuade. But persuasion, although it's a gift, it can be perverted. But my question is, are you using your gift to persuade and convince, to promote God's will, or to deviate from God's will? Are you promoting and persuading things that you are desperate for, things that you are worried about, or things that you are consumed with? Or are you prompting or promoting God's will for your family? Are you pursuing and persuading things that are out of God's plan for you or in God's plan for you? What do you persuade your husband to do? God's will or your will? I had to deal with this myself many times when I talk to my husband. I stop and ask myself, am I persuading this course of action because I want to do this so badly? Or am I having God's will and God's way as the center of my life, as the center of my persuasion? Because if I don't, I'm prone to create conflict. I'm prone to create a mess, not just for myself, but for others as well. Sarah seems to have easily succeeded in persuading Abram, her husband. Abram, he agreed to the plan. Let's read verse 4 of this same chapter 16. He went into Hagar, and she conceived, and when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her sight. Another translation says, when she saw that she conceived, she looked with contempt on her mistress. She here is Hagar, looked with contempt on her mistress is Sarah. She looked with contempt on her mistress. Now, what's contempt? It's an attitude or a feeling that a person is worthless, that a person is beneath consideration or deserves to be despised. Hagar, even though she did not initiate this plan and she did not invite this pregnancy or volunteer for it, she is definitely not blameless in this story. She's not entirely innocent either. It's a sad picture of how attitudes can flip depending on what you have or you do not have. Depending on what our status is, our attitudes can flip. Boy, that's so dangerous, isn't it? She went from being a slave girl picking Sarah's toenails to being a biological mother to this heir of this wealthy couple. Abraham and Sarah were the Ambanis of that day. They're like Bill and Melinda Gates of that time. If you actually read Genesis chapter 14, Abraham had 318 men who were trained for war. These were people born in his own house. He had his own military. To put it mildly, Abraham and Sarah were very wealthy. They were a very rich couple, and Hagar is carrying the dream of their life, their heir. And with that growing tummy, she thought her social standing was growing too. She began to look down on Sarah. Now think about this. Hagar now shares with Abraham something that Sarah did not. She shares a son with Abraham that Sarah does not. Being a slave, this was a quick promotion, or at least Hagar thought it was. She began to feel very superior to Sarah. And what was growing in Hagar was not just her tummy. Her pride was growing. Her contempt was growing. Her superiority complex was growing. Her disrespect towards Sarah was growing. And the Bible does not clearly tell us how her contempt translated into her behavior. It's not very clear. Was it just her body language? Were there words that were exchanged between Sarah and Hagar? Was it a combination of both body language and words? We don't know. The Bible does not paint it clearly for us. Whatever it was, it sure made Sarah extremely upset. She was furious. This reminds me of a proverb. Familiarity breeds contempt. This is loaded with truth. Familiarity breeds contempt. It means when you get to know someone very closely, when you get into their inner circle, you begin to dislike them or despise them. Why? Because you see their flaws up close. You see their shortcomings. It's like when a young couple gets married and reality begins to hit slowly and they start seeing each other's faults. If they don't keep their feelings or their attitudes in check, contempt can start building really quick. Anything that the spouse does can look a little bit disgusting. The way they walk, the way they talk or relate with people, or even simple things like maybe chewing their food can be offensive. It feels like, oh, can you eat a little bit softly? You're chomping your food. That's disgusting. Contempt is this feeling of disdain or scorn. When you are contemptuous, you show how much you despise the person. You treat them as if they are inferior to you, as if they are worthless. Sometimes you even use words to shame them or ridicule them. It's extremely sad, what people who are filled with contempt do. You scorn with maybe degrading looks. As a result, you dishonor them. I'm reminded of Michal, Saul's daughter, who's also David's wife, when she sees David worshiping God. And David worshipped God out of the overflow of his heart. It's probably not how Michal would worship, maybe. Maybe her approach to worship is more dignified. David says, I don't mind becoming more undignified than this to worship my God, my Creator, who did so much for me. But because Michal had this attitude, Michal despised him. She had contempt for him, and that was the end of their relationship. Is there someone in your life you show contempt towards? You disregard them in your heart? You have a sense of disrespect towards them? You dismiss them as if they're not worthy of honor? If a relationship is not built on mutual respect and dignity, then it's not going to be a healthy relationship at all. Even close family relationships can get contemptuous. In fact, we often have the most dislike and disdain for those who are closest to us, who live with us. And do you know why? Because the people closest to us have the ability to evoke strong emotions, since their actions directly affect us. That's why it's important to keep those in check. Contempt, disdain, it destroys relationships. My friend, I have to tell you, God opposes the proud, the contemptuous person He hates. Sarah got really rubbed on the wrong side with Hagar's attitude. She's not going to tolerate Hagar's contempt. Let's read what she does. Let's go to chapter 16, verse 5. So Sarah said to Abraham, May the wrong done to me be upon you. I put my slave woman into your arms, but when she saw that she had conceived, I was insignificant in her sight. May the Lord judge between you and me. But Abram said to Sarah, Look, she's your slave. Do to her whatever you please. And Hagar right now is sandwiched between this old couple, exchanging these words, probably fighting. She was taken into that man's chamber, but she was never taken into his heart. She was released by her mistress, but Sarah really did not set her free. Now she's like this tennis ball tossed between these two. And the Bible says Sarah mistreated Hagar. Now the word mistreated used here is the same original Hebrew word used in Exodus chapter 1, verse 11. It's the same exact word that describes the harsh treatment of the Israelites when they were building the cities of Pithom and Ramesses. It is clear that she was treated harshly. She was afflicted. She was made to work more rigorously. Hagar was so done with it. She decided that it was better to die than be in that living hell. And she ran away. She was hurt in the hands of godly people. Abraham and Sarah were godly people. And these are the kinds of things that actually make you scratch your head. Sarah was a godly woman, no doubt, but she also mistreated Hagar. David was a godly man, but he also sinned many times, didn't he? Bad things can happen in the hands of godly people. We find ourselves being hurt in the hands of God's people. Why? Why do those things happen? Because they deal with sin just like you and me. They are godly people, but they are not gods. They deal with sinful, corrupt nature. And perhaps you are among those who have been so deeply hurt by godly people that you have confused God's imperfect people with God. We all at different points have misrepresented God. We have also seen others misrepresent God. We have not been the kind of believers, the kind of Christians that God has called us to be. Maybe we stumbled in our faith and caused other people to stumble too. Maybe you have even run away from God as a result of others being a stumbling block to you. Let me remind you, God is El Roi. He's a God who sees. The God who saw Hagar being used, abused, and abandoned, He sees you too. The God who pursued Hagar and directed her is also reaching out to you. Instead of running away, discover God in a difficult time. That's exactly what Hagar did. She didn't care for her life when she ran away. She thought, I'd better die than to live in this torture, than to live in this hell that Sarah is putting me through. She ran away, but God called her. She discovered the God who sees her, who knows her, and who cares for her. She thought, nobody sees me, nobody cares for me. Abraham and Sarah did not go running and looking for her. God said, I have concern for you. He said, your son will be Ishmael, and Ishmael means God hears. He's not only a God who sees, but He's a God who hears. Tucked away in every quiet corner of every person's heart are wounds and tears. God sees them. He knows and He cares. If you feel like you were used, abused, or abandoned, I have news for you. I have good news for you. You have an El Roi. You have a God who sees you. Discover God in your difficult time. This story is not about Sarah or Hagar being the victim or the villain. It's about who the victor is. God is working, and He works in spite of our weaknesses. He works in spite of our frailties, and He is glorified as the victor in our lives. Remember, in your desperation, don't turn to persuasion. Don't turn to persuasion that is against God's will. I know it's hard to wait, especially when you have already waited for many years. But don't be tempted to doing God's will your way, in your timing. Don't allow familiarity to breed contempt in your relationships. God opposes the proud. And in your most difficult times, discover God. Remember, He's right there. He sees you. He hears you. He knows you. Thank you so much for watching, and forgive me for my long silence here on my channel. I'll post another video on what was going on when I was not creating content here. But meanwhile, you can follow me on Instagram. I've been a little more active than I was here on my YouTube channel, and I'll be making more videos again. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon.